shut this door too.
Where's Ed?
He's got
Oh, leadership.
Okay, so today we are going to talk about God. All right. Now we're not going to talk about it in a religious sense like you might do in religion here at school. We're going to try and talk about God in a philosophical sense. So we'll come up with a definition of what we mean by God in a moment. But for now, let's just say the existence of God is something that plagued philosophers forever. All right, going back to Aristotle, he's arguing about it. Contemporary philosophers still debate it to this day. All right, does God exist? Doesn't God exist? All right, so it's very much an important part of metaphysics. So to begin with, we've just got some definitions, right? Theism. Theism. All right, that comes from the Greek word theos, Theos, which is God. All right. So theism is belief in God. Atheism is the rejection of belief in God. Okay, so over here we have the assertion, God, and then in brackets S, God or plural of gods exist. Over here, atheism, we have the rejection of that proposition. God does not exist, God in brackets S does not exist. And you have heard it described this way, like agnostic means I haven't really made up my mind yet. I'm unsure, okay? People often say that's sort of the middle point, somewhere halfway in between. Not sure, looking for evidence, haven't decided. So it's okay to think about that like agnostic as sort of the middle, but it's technically not correct, okay? Because here, theism and atheism is a claim about a being, okay, a claim about God. Agnostic and Gnostic, okay, you can see the A at the front. Agnostic and Gnostic is a claim about knowledge, okay? Gnostic, gnosis, is the Greek word for knowledge, all right? Agnostic is a claim to not have knowledge, all right? So it might be you believe in God, but you're not certain. You would be an agnostic theist, all right? It might be you reject belief in God and you're certain it's true. You would be a Gnostic, G-N-O, you claim to have knowledge about this proposition. Okay, so that's quite a tricky one, but to simplify it, we can just say it's a claim, agnosticism, I don't know, all right, looking at the evidence. Now, we've got three types of theism that's generally understood by different religions, and we're going to speak only philosophically about it. So the first one is monotheism. Okay, gives it away in the name. What does monotheism mean? Nikolai's first. One, very good. Mono is one. Got a monobrow, one brow. Okay, monocycle. It's good unicycle, isn't it? All right. What about polytheism, Harry?
I guess it's multiple gods,
very good.
But they're all some way.
Excellent. Multiple, many gods, very good. Let's see if we can come up with some examples. So monotheism, we might think Christianity, Judaism, Islam, the three sort of big religions. Polytheism, we can think of religions of the past. Who can think of an example? Mena? Egyptian gods, very good. What's an example of an Egyptian god? Anubis is one, yep. Set. Osiris, very good. All right, what's another example? The Greeks, the Romans, they all had their sort of ideas of polytheism. They had lots of different gods and they were battling and they had their sort of humans that were their pets that they might look after. Then the last one, pantheism. What does this mean? This one's a bit trickier. This is God is the universe. All right, so everything that exists is identical with God. All right. And an example of that is Hinduism. All right? Hinduism proposes many gods, but they are all part of the one God. We live in a God soup. That's the proposal of Hinduism. Now, within classical philosophy, we tend to not talk about polytheism because there's a number of contradictions that arise when we have properties of God's existence. That's going to become evident a bit later. So we do tend to talk about monotheism and pantheism, and we don't tend to necessarily make a distinction there. Okay, so monotheism and pantheism. So here, that's what I've got on this slide here. We've got monotheism, one God, external to creation. Polytheism, many gods, and pantheism, God is identical with the universe. They're the ways we can talk about it. So here's what we mean when we talk about God philosophically speaking. All right, I said before, it's important. Definitions are important. Why? Especially with this question, does God exist? If we say, what do you mean by God? Oh, there's a man in the sky. All right, that's sort of a polytheistic understanding of God, right? We're going to try and steal man. What do you mean by God? Another one might have been God is love. You know, are you going to reject belief in love? Here, this is generally what we mean when philosophers talk about the existence of God. Firstly, immaterial. Okay, God is not a being that is composed of matter. Doesn't exist inside space and time. Outside of time, outside of space. All right. If something's not made of matter, it can't exist inside space. So God is not composed of material outside of space and time. God is simple, has no parts or composites. God is eternal outside of time. And then we have these three O's. All right. So omnipotent, all powerful, can do anything. Omniscient, all knowing. And it can be argued, right? If God is all powerful and knowledge is a power, of course he's omniscient. You know, that one sort of flows, but it is necessary for us to know. So omnipotent, all powerful, omniscient, all knowing, and omnibenevolent, all good. All right. Some philosophers will remove the omnibenevolent and just talk about God as a creator rather than as a moral being. Others will add that one on. So generally speaking, we have the first sort of five, and people talk about whether we have the sixth one or not, omnibenevolent. So that's what we mean by God, right? We're not talking about a person in the sky. We're talking about the source of being. Okay? If you think of everything that exists as a waterfall, then God is the source of that waterfall. All right? To use an analogy. And what we're doing here is we're not going to base our arguments off of some religious text. We're not going to base our arguments off of the way we feel. We're going to look at, like in mathematics, we could use the quadratic formula to find the roots of a quadratic. Okay, that's something we could do in mathematics, and we could generate the true solution. We're saying that's a reasonable process we can follow. With these arguments about God, we're saying, is there a reasonable argument we can follow that establishes God's existence? Okay, so today we're going to look at one argument, and in coming weeks we'll look at other ones. This is probably the most simple argument, all right? And it is called the Kalam Argument. It was first written by an Islamic scholar about 1,000 years ago, and it's been passed down, and there's lots of variations of it. We're going to look at a reasonably simple one. So, stage one. There's two stages to this argument. All that begins to exist has a cause. It says, look around you. Everything you're surrounded by has a cause for its existence. You yourself are caused by your parents, them by their own parents. The chairs, all right, produced in a factory. Same with your pens and pencil cases. The food that you eat is grown on a farm. It's caused by the farm. Everything you're surrounded by, everything that begins to exist, has some cause for its existence. Okay, that's the first claim here. The second claim, the universe began to exist. So you can think of it like a series of dominoes going through time, right? You're here now, you're this domino, and you exist now because of your parents. And they exist, like let's think of your mother, right? Okay, you can have this chain of people, if you could cross time. Imagine you're holding your mother's hand, and she's holding her mother's hand, and she's holding her mother's hand. So what are we at? Mother, grandmother, great-grandmother. You can keep going back, all right? Infinitely. All right, at some point we're going to get people that you can no longer reproduce with, okay? Some form of sapiens that we can't reproduce with because they're not biologically on par with us. We keep going back, okay? We follow this back. You follow this back far enough, you are related to trees, all right? The claim of science is that all life on Earth, every living thing, is descended from one piece of bacteria in the ocean about 3 billion years ago. All right? And everything's arisen, everything that's alive has arisen because of that. And then it's like, okay, so we're following this causal chain backwards. You're here, here's the bacteria. Why does the bacteria exist? You know, it exists for some reason. You know, some people would stop there and say, well, God caused that to exist. Okay, some people would stop there. Others go back further and say, well, no, it's because of the amino acids in the ocean, all right? So there's this primordial soup on planet Earth. We've got water, and there's this primordial soup, and maybe it got zapped with a piece of lightning, and the amino acids shuffled, and they produce this first living thing. All right? Why do they exist? Okay? This goes back to the formation of our planet. How old's planet Earth? Does anyone know, according to contemporary science? So we've got a couple for you to remember. 4.5 billion years old. All right, that's when planet Earth formed. So our solar system used to be a accretion disk, which is basically all this matter spread like a plate. You can think of it as like a round plate, and it collects because of the force of gravity. So we've got the sun in the middle and all the planets around forming together. That's how our planet formed. All right, and so you can think like the matter that you're composed of. Matter's never created nor destroyed. Matter's always existed, either as energy or matter. And so the matter that makes up your body existed 4.5 billion years ago. You know, that's the claim. The claim is, come on in, that if you are a being composed of carbon, oxygen, and nitrogen, carbon, because it's a higher level element, it only forms in a supermassive star. Only that has the gravitational force to pull hydrogen atoms together, smash them together. Like, let's talk about that really quickly, because that's quite amazing. How many electrons does a hydrogen atom have?
Hydrogen?
Yeah. One. It's the first element, okay? Hydrogen. So it's got one electron, one proton, one neutron. That's hydrogen, okay? So you keep following this causal chain back, right? Here's our Earth. We go back to the start of the universe, the singularity, the Big Bang. How old's the universe? So we've got some numbers for you to remember. So we've got 13.5 billion years for the universe. All right, so there's 9 billion years between the emergence of the universe and Earth forming. All right, so the universe has been around for a lot longer than Earth. It's not like Earth that formed straight away. And then life, like first cell life, as soon as water got here, like 3 billion years ago. Okay, so we're talking about hydrogen, right? So during the Big Bang, all of the matter in space is at that single point. That's what we call the singularity. And some physicists devote their whole careers to like the first microseconds of the universe, all right? And it's amazing, like you think of the laws of physics, we can map them back. There's a couple of reasons why we can point to the Big Bang. We can rewind the laws of physics up to like 10 to the minus 20 seconds. That's how old the universe is. And then physics sort of breaks down, stops working. So this causal chain, what we're saying, you're here now, why? Because of this causal chain. All of these prior events that have occurred to here, that first point, the Big Bang. All right, the universe began to exist. So there are two pieces of evidence we have for the universe beginning to exist. This is what contemporary science maintains. The universe exists because of the Big Bang. The first is cosmic background radiation. That's something you can observe through a telescope. It's sort of leftover residual microwaves from the Big Bang. The second thing is everything in space is spreading out. Everything is moving further and further apart. You've probably seen the demonstration before, maybe I should have done it, where you have a balloon and you have all of the stars, they're like dots on the balloon, and as you blow the balloon up, they get further and further and further apart. That's what we're seeing. Every star you look at is blue shifted. It's moving away from us, right? Everywhere. And so what that means is space is spreading out. So if things are getting further apart, what does that tell you how they used to be? They used to be close together. Okay, so they're the two sort of predominant pieces of evidence we use to establish this Big Bang, the universe had a cause. So here's stage one of the argument. All right, all that begins to exist has a cause. You, all right, your parents, all right, you as a biological being, that first piece of bacteria, the amino acids, The earth as a bowl of rock and lava has a cause, all the way back to here, all right? And it says, this is where the universe began. And so because the universe began to exist, it also must have some cause, all right? So this is stage one of the argument. And most people are reasonably happy to accept this argument. Does anyone want to have any comments about it so far?
How could the universe begin if time is a constant value?
A constraint within the universe. Time is a property of the universe.
Yeah. So because obviously time has to be infinite. Is that right?
Some people would say not. No.
No.
So yeah, if time is infinite.
So how can time start?
Yeah. So and like maybe here's a question: if time doesn't exist because the universe doesn't exist, what does it mean to say before?
Yeah.
Before.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
There has to be something.
Good.
Yeah.
Good point. Yep. What does it mean to say before? So talking about there's a contradiction in terms of before the universe. Yep. 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 And so I think with these things, because of how complex they are, we're always going to be talking in terms of analogies. If I say God is outside of space, all right, well, where is that? Like if space and the universe is everything and God is outside of it, like where is that? What is outside of, what does that mean? Because outside proposes some alternative space, doesn't it? So we're always going to be using, so here's a response, we're always going to be using language by analogy, because our language is limited to this universe, isn't it? So yeah, most people are pretty happy with this, right? All right. Where the objections come in is the next stage when we look at, well, what is it that could possibly cause the universe? So we've got, if the universe has a cause, then the cause must be immaterial. It must be outside of space and time. It must be all-powerful, and it must act with free will. And then it just follows on. The second premise is asserting the argument of stage one, the conclusion of stage one. It's saying we've already established that's true, and so then there's the conclusion. So if we're going to contend, remember, if we're going to contend with a deductive argument, we have to contend with the premises. We don't just reject the conclusion, all right? Valid argument, whether it's true or not, will be decided by the premises. If the premises are true, the argument has to be true. All right, that's something Year 12 should know, and Year 11 will learn when we come to talk a bit more about deductive arguments. Okay, so let's assess those things. If the universe has a cause, the cause must be immaterial. Why must it be immaterial, do we reckon? Or do we not reckon? No?
Because if the universe had been created by the all-powerful God, that means if he is going to be material, that means he can exist before time, before the universe was existing.
Perfect. If he is material, it means he's part of the universe. Because what is the universe? Everything that's material. Yeah, that's what we mean by material. Very good. So if we say the universe is every material thing that exists, and what can cause all material things to exist? Well, it has to be something that's beyond that, something outside. Again, we're using that language by analogy. Very good. So we've got immaterial, meaning outside of space. Why would we extend it to say outside of time? You picked up on this, Vinny.
Because time hadn't started yet.
Excellent. Time is a property of the universe. And so one of the words we had describing God was eternal, okay? And so this is where the language is difficult, because for us, what is it like for an eternal being to exist? We don't know, because we are temporal beings. We live in a temporal world. We are constrained by time. All right, outside space and time. All powerful, all right? All powerful because it's created everything from nothing, okay? And acting with free will, that might be one we sort of talk about a little bit more. You don't have to address that one at this stage, okay? But I think you can just understand the argument like this. It's saying everything has a cause. We can trace that causal chain all the way back to the Big Bang. Big Bang has a cause, and the argument saying it has to be God. Can't be the universe. The universe can't cause itself, okay? Just like a domino can't cause itself to fall over, all right?
I just have a little bit to say about the all-powerful part.
Yeah, sure.
Because the bit that gets me is that we can like understand that the universe is limited, right? Right? The space is limited, and this God who created, the universe out of nothing, right? He created a limited material plane, right? What if there was a being that was a little bit higher that could create this space, but also a bit extra? Like, the universe is limited, and does that prove that this wasn't done by an all-powerful being, and therefore it, goes against the conclusion? Because a more powerful being could have created more space.
So he like, I think I've got a little interesting response for you. Is, if God is all powerful, what does that mean? It means he lacks nothing. All right, all powerful, possesses every power. Okay, but there is something that an all powerful God does lack: limitation. He's not limited in any way. So I don't know. Does that sort of
It's just interesting to think that an all-powerful being would create
a limited
world.
Yeah.
Because they could have had more space to do more, to create more, but it's limited and it might be for a particular reason that we don't know, because we don't have the subject high knowledge that he does.
Right.
It's very interesting.
So what about this? One of the arguments is, because one of the things we sort of brushed over here was that there's only one. So here might be an answer. Why can't there be two gods that are all powerful?
Because that would challenge to go on the same page.
Absolutely. If one is all powerful, all right, it means it possesses every power, and another one is all powerful. Well, there's going to be some sort of limitation that they can't affect what the other does.
Yeah, they don't have power over the other, and therefore they're not all powerful.
Absolutely. Yeah. Very good. So, interested to hear what your thoughts are on it. So, the argument in a nutshell, we can trace all events back. It's very interesting to talk about that's called cosmogony. Okay, cosmogony. So, coming from cosmos, cosmogony. That's cosmogony. Origin of the universe. Where's it come from? Why does it exist? All right. So, contemporary science says Big Bang, and they sort of stop there. And there are some other scientific proposals. I might talk to you guys about what they are, but they're saying they rewind back to 10 to the minus 20 seconds. Everything comes from. So we got two questions that we're going to write about in our journal. First one is like, how do we define God philosophically? So it's important. All right, we're not talking about God in a religious context. Okay, we're trying to include sort of everyone around the table in this conversation. And then we're going to look specifically at the Kalam argument. We talk about stage 1. Is it true? Is it not? And then stage 2 as well. What can we contend with? Remember, we contend with the premises, not the conclusion. All right. Very good. So I'll leave that up there. I might just, I've whacked it on sector already. So the questions they're on sector for you.
All right.